he's not
saying
whitewashing slavery. So
he's not?
He's not. No,
Okay.
he's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves? You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to try to end slavery? Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit, I have a list of every single one. Like, people migrated from Cuba because white people bad. Not because of Castro. Yes, no, it's in there.
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on this because I've been in the media professionally since 2011. I have been doing media since I was 14. And I studied media at Indiana University. What really, I know, I forgot to ask you about that. I know you have some IU roots too. We could talk about that in a moment. What really gets me is, and I want to hear what you have to say about what she said, but what really gets me personally, and I'll get this out of the way, is that our media has been dumbed down to include people that probably should not be in the conversation. And now what makes someone going viral is stuff like this, which is just completely asinine. So we have seen how the Trump administration wants to practically, even though they say they are the anti-cancel culture administration, they want to cancel Black museums. They do not want this history taught. I believe this has been going on for some time, but it really ramped up post George Floyd when they used CRT and school choice as the boogeyman, and now they are just coming for it all. So with all that being said, what was your reaction to seeing what went down on CNN?
Yes, it reminded me of a quote from Malcolm X. And Malcolm X in the early 1960s said that he didn't understand how Black entertainers were pulled out in front of TV to make commentary on complex issues dealing with the freedom and advancement of Black people. And he said that, show me where a white trumpeter, a white tap dancer, a white magician is brought out to talk about Cold War politics, to talk about a plane shot down over the Soviet Union, a U-2 spy plane shot down over the Soviet Union, or the Cuban Missile Crisis. So we don't do that with white people, but you'll bring in a magician, a comedian, a tap dancer, or an athlete to do that when it comes to Black folks. And I've always been struck by that. And and this is part of why I kind of feel some kind of way about us expecting hip hop artists to weigh in on these things when there are literally, and I say this without hyperbole, that there are literally there are thousands of professionally trained people who study race, class, who know metrics, who have done research, who are social scientists, who are philosophers and historians and others who've written articles in peer-reviewed journals, who can tell you about these things with these really complicated phenomena, right? So what I find fascinating about Jillian Jacobs is what's her name?
Michaels.
Michaels.
Yes.
What's fascinating about her is that she is the tap dancer. She's the white magician. She's the white trumpeter. She's a white random entertainer who's completely unqualified to weigh in into these issues. And I think the reason you have someone like Jillian come in there and say something so ridiculously untrue is because a professionally trained white person, a real historian, would not say what she's saying because what she's saying is not true. She's lying, right? There are only two options here. She's either wildly ignorant or she's lying, right? So I have to put it that way. So those museums do not say all white people bad. All white people bad. No museum says that. The Smithsonian doesn't say that. These museums that she's talking about, the Trump administration is trying to mute and modify their presentations, control what they do with these professionally trained docents and historians, the people who come up with these fantastic exhibits, these multi-million-dollar exhibits over years of work and research that Trump, wildly unqualified, Jillian, I mean, I guess if I don't know how to do good burpees or something, or maybe modify my diet, I would go to her. But I would not go to her to talk about. I could say with confidence, I've not Googled her. I will say with confidence, I will bet anything she has no PhD in history. I don't think she has a master's degree in history. And so to have her weigh in right here, is, again, it goes back to what Malcolm was saying, but in this case, we actually have the white person is the magician, the tap dancer, the comedian, right? Anyway, so I think that everything she's saying is absurd and ridiculous. It's not true. But the data I would love to talk about, I could talk about and dissect what she was saying. One, for listeners who are curious, I will ask people to show me somewhere. I know people say, no, it's true. Show me, you can email me, let me know, give me a picture of somewhere in the Smithsonian saying all white people are bad. I think that when you look at the institution of slavery, there's no way you get around the fact that the institution of slavery was critical to the United States. And in every single way, I could in 30 seconds say this. When we think about 2% of whites being enslavers, I'm assuming she's talking about 1860. So in 1860, we're talking about the South being the place where it is legal to enslave people. 25% of whites there were enslavers. But the biggest industry in the United States of America was slavery. It was worth more than all the banks and railroads combined. The biggest export for the United States in 1860 was cotton. I live in Connecticut, and in Connecticut and in Massachusetts, two states where slavery was illegal, there were textile mills that were based on getting raw materials from the South. The people here in Hartford were employed with insurance companies in the city where I live that insured people who were enslaved in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia. These insurance companies, the banks down in New York City, which is 2.5 hours away from where I live, were financiers who gave loans to these to the biggest industry of the United States, which is slavery. In Newport, well, I love Newport, Rhode Island. I go there. Shipbuilding was big in Newport. They made ships that imported enslaved people from Africa to the Caribbean to the United States, and the goods they produced all throughout this region. So we're talking about clothes. We're talking about manacles that were made in the industrialized North to keep people enslaved in the South. And even the people here in Hartford or Cleveland or Chicago or Philadelphia, the coffee they had, the sugar they had, the clothes they wore, the insurance companies that insured their houses were all tied to the institution of slavery. So it's sort of like saying, someone else said this, that it's like saying that what percentage of Americans are owners of computers or the computer or internet or high tech stuff, right? I would suspect that a very small fraction of people are. It may be the biggest industry of certain industry. How many of us are owners of Hollywood studios? How many people in Los Angeles are owners of Hollywood studios? But to say that somehow these have no impact,
right?
If you think about the institution of slavery, it was the United States itself would not have been economically viable, would not be even a superpower, would not have ever been in the position that we've been had it not been so deeply invested in slavery. And slavery was everything to the United States. There's no way you get around it. We talk about the majority of the founding fathers, but majority of people in the Supreme Court, you could go on up for years who were enslavers. And so, yeah, Jillian is a clown who is either a liar or wildly ignorant of the stuff she's talking about. And I think that I'll end with this. There's a famous historian, a white man named Gary Nash, who was one of the most famous historians of early America. And he taught at UCLA. And he said that powerful people, he died years ago. He said powerful people in the present try to control narratives of the past in order to control outcomes of the future. So we said that a long time ago. And we've seen these debates about like history and the United States, what we see here, this isn't new. I mean, countries all around the planet, particularly autocratic regimes, hyper-nationalist regimes, fascist regimes, have manipulated history in all sorts of ways. They've tried to police it. They've clamped down on it. They've intimidated people. They've created narratives that are ahistorical to meet political ends. And what we see with the Trump administration is no different.